Xavier Worthy broke the record for the fastest 40-yard dash ever at the NFL Combine, but will he be good for fantasy in 2024? We'll hit on that and other notable performers from the Combine on today's episode of Locked On Fantasy Football.
You are Locked On Fantasy, your daily NFL fantasy podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm one of your hosts, Michelle Magdziuk. When I'm not doing this, I'm a researcher and fantasy analyst over at NFL Network. Vinnie is not here today, but I have an awesome guest. It's Marcus Mosher, the co-host of the Locked On Dynasty Football Podcast and the host of Locked On Cowboys. I am so excited to have him on today. He is just an endless vault of information. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started. All right, let's hop into this, Marcus. The NFL Combine is now officially over. We are one step closer to the NFL Draft. Let's start with the quarterback position. Unfortunately, the top three guys, Caleb Williams, Drake May, Jaden Daniels, did not participate, but I still want to hit on them quickly. So can you tell me your order that you have them ranked for the NFL Draft, but then also for fantasy football?
Ooh, this is a tough question right off the bat. Not giving me a softball one to get me going. So this is awesome. For me, it's Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May. And I get the feeling, Michelle, that that's the way they're going to be drafted when we get to April. But I'm not sure it's going to be 1, 2, 3 off the board, first three picks. I'm starting to feel a little bit like that Patriots pick at number 3 could be a bit of a wild card. But in terms of predicting the order, I do think it's going to go Caleb, Daniels, May.
What do you, so I think Caleb Williams, it's pretty much, it seems like a surefire thing that he's going to go to the Bears, right? What do you think about that landing spot first off? Do you think that would be good for his fantasy value with DJ Moore there? Hopefully they bring in some other weapons, but at least he has DJ Moore and Cole Kmet. Not the worst situation right off the bat for a rookie.
No, I think it's a fantastic landing spot for Caleb for all the reasons you just mentioned, right? Like you have a bona fide number 1 receiver and DJ Moore. You've got a tight end that I think a lot of people really were excited about last year in Cole Kmet. You've got a running game. I don't want to forget about that. They have a running game, so it's not going to have to be all on Caleb's shoulders. And then the offensive line is better than I think what people want to discuss, because Justin Fields just takes so many sacks that we always blame it on the offensive line, when I really think it's more of a Justin Fields issue. So yeah, I think this is a good landing spot. They have the number 9 pick. I won't be surprised, Michelle, if that's a receiver as well. Caleb Williams landing in I would say a plus landing spot, which doesn't happen very often when you're the number 1 pick.
For real. Yeah, this is a good spot for him. I agree. And then I also agree with you that I think Jaden Daniels has some more upside for fantasy, right? But what would be a good landing spot for him? Because I would not like it with the Patriots. I mean, it's just hard to envision a Patriots quarterback, right now having this great success for fantasy. There's just no weapons there. I guess the Commanders, they do have some great wide receivers. For some reason, I'm just skeptical about that organization.
Yeah.
Not for some reason. They have given us many worries. But what would be your favorite landing spot for Jaden Daniels in terms of fantasy football?
I mean, I think Atlanta is my favorite spot just because they already have a really good offensive line. They've got Drake London, they've got Kyle Pitts, they've got Bijan Robinson, and they've got the cap space to spend in free agency to bring in some more weapons. But I just don't know how realistic that is with the Falcons drafting at 8. I think Daniels is going to go in the top 3. I think Washington is a neutral landing spot. You mentioned the receivers. I still really like Terry McLaurin. They have Jahan Dotson. They did just cut Logan Thomas, so they need to rework some things in their offense. But we did see Kyler Murray be pretty successful as a fantasy quarterback in a Cliff Kingsbury offense. I'm not sure he's going to post those type of numbers, but I do think it's a decent landing spot.
Yeah, I think the Commanders makes the most sense, right? Because I could see these quarterbacks going 1, 2, 3. I know we always say that at this time of year, and then normally it changes up. But at this time of the year, it does feel like it's going to go 1, 2, and 3. That will be interesting to just watch out for. Now, 2 guys that did actually perform at the combine. Bo Nix from Oregon and JJ McCarthy from Michigan, right? They both threw, they did the drills. I thought Nix looked pretty solid overall. JJ McCarthy was a little bit more inconsistent there. They're very close to the same size, both 6'2". Nix is 6'2" and 1/8. Drake is 6'2" and a half. 214 pounds for Nix, 219 for Drake. When you're comparing these two guys, do you have one that you like much better than the other, or are you down on both? You love both. How do you feel about these guys?
All right, so I think JJ McCarthy is the better prospect, and he should be drafted higher. He's younger, he's got a better arm. I think he's very athletic. But when it comes to fantasy football and dynasty football, which is what I cover over on LockedOn Dynasty, that's a shameless plug. I kind of like Bo Nix better. He's just a more efficient runner. He's not afraid of throwing the ball down the field. His turnover worthy rate on PFF was the lowest in the class. Only 3 interceptions last year and 45 touchdowns. I don't know if Nix goes in round 1, but I do think he's a top 40 pick. And I do think he's going to start right away. And with his athleticism, with his willingness to throw the ball down the field, I think he's a major value at the quarterback position right now.
Do you think either of them would be good for fantasy? Do you think they have the upside that we need in order for them to actually be relevant in the rookie season?
If I had to pick between the two, I would pick Nix. I just worry, Michelle, with JJ McCarthy that he's going to go to a team and they're going to try to replicate the Michigan offense where he's throwing the ball 22 to 25 times a game, and they're being very conservative until he kind of grows into that role. So if I had to bet, I would pick Nix, especially with all of his college experience. He's going to be like a 39-year-old rookie. I feel like he's going to be pretty confident coming into the NFL and being able to be successful.
Yeah, I'm a little bit higher on Bo Nix in terms of fantasy, but a big part of this will come down to their landing spot, right?
Yeah.
And I did want to talk about one more guy here, Michael Penix Jr. I feel like he's being overlooked a little bit from Washington. I think I'm really, really high on him, but this is what I'll say. This is my claimer. I don't watch a ton of college football throughout the year, but I do watch every Texas Longhorns game, right? So Washington beats up on Texas in the semifinals, and Michael Penix Jr. looked absolutely incredible in that game. There was no wrongdoing that he could do. Every ball was just perfectly spot on. So I have that game stuck in my head. I know that's not the player he was all year long, but I absolutely love him. And I would love for my Steelers to pick him at pick number 20. I know that's high for him, but do you think this would be a terrible mistake? Do you think I'm way too high on Penix overall?
Do I think it would be a terrible mistake? No, because I think Penix is already better than the quarterbacks Pittsburgh has on the roster, which I know
that's not hard. That's
not a high bar to clear, right? I don't know if he's ever going to be a franchise-changing quarterback, and maybe he's not even a top 12 starting quarterback in the NFL, and that makes things a little bit hairy. But I do think he can go to several teams this year and be better than what they have, and I think he can be fantasy relevant right away because he loves to throw the ball down the field. He's incredibly accurate. I look at him as like a Tua Tagovailoa type of quarterback. Stand in the pocket, throw the ball down the field, get him with some weapons, get him with a good offensive coordinator or head coach. And I do think you could see success right away.
10 and a half inch hands. So completely different than Kenny Pickett. A good like 2 inches bigger. I know that doesn't really matter all that much, but I love to make fun of Kenny Pickett's tiny hands because
we all do. It's so much fun.
Yeah, he's made my life miserable watching games, so he deserves it. We're going to jump into the wide receivers in our next segment. We saw Xavier Worthy just beast out and, kill that record. But, the record he beat was John Ross. So we're going to talk about how much does this boost him in fantasy, if at all, in our next segment. Get buckets with your first bet on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $150 if your bet wins. Bet on all your favorite NBA players and teams with quick bets, live same-game parlays, exclusive props, and more. My favorite player prop for tonight's slate of NBA games is LeBron James to have over 39.5 combined points, assists, and rebounds against the Oklahoma Thunder. Giannis came through for me on Friday, so that means I'm now 5-0 on my picks so far that I've given y'all. Let's see how long this streak can last. To get in on the action, just sign up at FanDuel.com/LockedOn and get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn Shoot your shot. FanDuel, official sportsbook partner of the NBA. So right off the top here with these wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors did not test or work out, but they're going to go super early in this draft, right? Top two guys in this class right here with Rome Odunze from Washington, who did perform and look awesome. I mean, I thought he just had a great combine all the way through. So let's compare these three guys. We don't have anything from the combine to compare with Malik Neighbors and Rome Odunze. Obviously, Marvin Harrison Jr. is number one. Would you agree? I think unless you're trying to be different, you would agree he's number one.
Yeah, I
But
will say it's closer. I think when you talk to a lot of teams in the NFL, they believe this is a really tight grouping. Most of
okay.
them have Marvin Harrison number one, but it's not leaps and bounds, which I think some people make it.
So with Neighbors and Odunze, who do you like better in terms of fantasy outlook, especially like earlier in their career?
I mean, both of them are going to be studs. So it's really pick your flavor of ice cream here. But I'll go Neighbors because I just think he's a little bit more dynamic after the catch. And I think teams can get him the ball a little bit easier, whether it's jet sweeps and screens and quick slants. I just see him being a little bit more effective as a receiver right away in his career. But a lot of this, Michelle, I think is going to depend on landing spots because I think there's a very good chance we see Marvin Harrison Jr. go to the Cardinals at number 4. Then we see the New York Giants take Malik Neighbors at number 6. And then Rome Odunze goes to, let's say, the Titans at number 7. I might like Rome's fit the best. You go to the Titans where they clearly need a number 1 receiver. You're in that Brian Callahan offense. Maybe Rome can be the new Jamar Chase for what like Callahan did in Cincinnati. I do think the landing spot is going to be really important when it comes to figuring out how to value these players as rookies.
And I was going to ask you what would be your favorite landing spot for Marvin Harrison Jr. because my favorite landing spot would be the Cardinals.
Same.
I think people are overlooking it and being like, "Oh, it'd be so great if he went to the Chargers." I think actually the Cardinals is absolutely the best landing spot for him. You have nobody there right now besides Michael Wilson Jr. at the wide receiver position. Like he has a clear-cut role to go in there and immediately get 160 targets if he ends up being who we think he can be. And people are underestimating, like we're just like forgetting how good Kyler Murray is because he was coming back from an ACL tear. Like this is a fantastic spot for him. I don't think there is a better spot out there for him.
No, I completely agree. One of the things the Cardinals have a lot of right now is inside receivers, whether it's Trey McBride, who's their tight end, plays out of the slot. Greg Dortch, really good slot receiver, especially down the stretch. But Kyler really hasn't had that dynamic outside vertical threat receiver. They tried to make AJ Green 2 years ago when he was dust. They had DeAndre Hopkins for a little bit, which DeAndre Hopkins is amazing, but he's not really a vertical receiver. You put Marvin Harrison Jr. in this offense, I agree. Like, could he average 10 targets a game? Absolutely. Could he be somebody who catches double-digit touchdowns as a rookie? Yes. This is my favorite spot. It just makes so much sense for all the parties involved.
This is so nice to have this group of the top 3 that they're all big too, right? We're not talking about these little small speedsters, which we're going to get into right now with Xavier Worthy. Now, he's not short. He's over 5'11", but 165 pounds. I think that's a big part of what we're kind of leaving out here when we say he broke the record. It's still insanely impressive no matter what size you are. Runs a 4.2 140. Does this move him up your fantasy rankings at all? Or are you not even you're not even changing it due to the 40 because we already knew he was fast, but
Yes.
also 165 pounds, a little scary.
So I'm not moving him up because I already had him really high. Like just based off his tape alone, I thought he was a fringe first round pick. Now I get why the weight concerns people. 165 pounds is small. However, I will say the NFL has gone more in this direction over the last couple of years. We saw Tank Dell come in under 170 pounds. We saw Devontae Smith come in at, was it 6'1", 170 pounds a couple of years ago. Tutu Atwell, I mean, I know he's not a big fantasy name, but has become a very functional NFL receiver at 155 pounds. So the weight is not ideal, but it's not something I'm crossing off either. I think Xavier Worthy is somebody who is going to end up in the first round, and I think his tape deserves that consideration because he is so dynamic after the catch. And I think the difference between like him and John Ross is John Ross was really just a vertical receiver. You threw him the ball 40 yards down the field. let him make plays. Same for Jamison Williams. Where I see Xavier Worthy thriving is more in the it's so hard to compare anybody to Tyreek Hill, but I'm just talking about the role where you can throw him slants, you can throw him bubble screens, you can give him jet sweeps, you can give him touches in the backfield, you can have him run an NFL route tree, and he's just going to make plays after the catch. So could he be somebody that comes in right away, and it's getting 7 to 8 looks in a good offense? Absolutely. You put him with the Chiefs or the 49ers or the Ravens, all these teams that have late first round picks, and I can see him being very, very relevant right away.
That's what I was going to say. It's nice for him that that's kind of his projection, right? In the later first round. So you're not going onto a team that needs this top guy, number one target to have all of these, to be this possession receiver. He's going to end up with likely a very good quarterback if he goes in that range where it's going to be a nice situation where he can be used as that deep threat. But you did mention he could do a lot of other things. But if he landed with a team like the Bills or the Chiefs or the Ravens, like he's going to be playing with a quarterback with a really big arm and a really good offense. So I think it's much better for him in this situation when we're looking at his fantasy impact early on. He's likely to land in a very, very nice spot. Now, I wanted to hit on my draft crush, Brian Thomas Jr. out of LSU. Runs a 4.33, and we're all just kind of ignoring it. Second fastest among all wide receivers at like 40 pounds heavier than Xavier Worthy. So I think like that's a little bit more impressive. It's pretty crazy. Now, I think he shows exceptional talent. I think he can be great in this league. I think do you expect him to go in the 20s or a little bit later than that? Now, would you expect Brian Thomas Jr. or Xavier Worthy off the board first?
Oh, I think it'll be Brian Thomas for all the reasons you just mentioned. Like, how many players in the NFL do we have right now that are 6'3" and can run in the 4.3s and are over 200 pounds? And more importantly, are natural receivers. Like, I think that's the one thing that people forget here. This isn't a Quentin Johnson situation where, okay, he's big and he's athletic, but we got to kind of teach him how to run routes and how to catch the football. That's not an issue for Brian Thomas at all. Listen, I think he's going to be someone that's really fun right away. Now, the consistency might not be there as he kind of learns how to play this outside receiver role. When he was at LSU, played a lot in the slot, didn't have to face a lot of press coverage, but teams that have quarterbacks with big arms that want to stretch the field a little bit, looking at you, Buffalo and Kansas City, I think are going to absolutely love Brian Thomas. So I think, mid-20s is probably his floor to me. And Michelle, I won't even be surprised if he goes higher than that because, again, it's one of these planet theories with Brian Thomas. Just not many guys walking around that have his combination of size and speed.
I think Brian Thomas Jr. would be such a nice addition to the Bills. A guy that I don't want to say he'd already be an upgrade to Gabe Davis because, Gabe Davis has been in the league for a while, and I think he's shown his worth of somewhat.
I'll say it. He'll be an upgrade.
At least he has a lot more upside, I'll say, right? And hopefully he can be more consistent with the catches. I have a fun little note on Brian Thomas Jr. So there have been 4 players that have scored 17 plus receiving touchdowns in a season in the SEC since 2000. That's as far back as my data goes. Brian Thomas Jr., Jamar Chase, Justin Jefferson, and Devonta Smith. That's the list.
Pretty good hit rate right there.
Yeah,
not bad.
That's pretty good. Were there any other wide receivers that impressed you during the combine that you wanted to hit on?
Yeah, I want to talk about Xavier Worthy's teammate, A.D. Mitchell, because I really liked A.D. Mitchell's tape. Now, he's not somebody who's super dynamic after the catch, but runs pretty good routes, has a big catch radius. I wasn't expecting him to run a 4.34. And now that he's shown that ability, I think my opinion has changed on him a little bit. Why can't he be someone who's playing on the outside, that's being a vertical threat, but also somebody who could lead an offense? I think A.D. Mitchell has firmly cemented himself as a first-round pick. And maybe if the Bills miss out on Brian Thomas, A.D. Mitchell is the next best receiver for them. Maybe the Ravens, who could use some size in their passing attack, could use A.D. Mitchell. I'm even looking at the 49ers, who could potentially lose Brandon Ayuk a year from now. I kind of think A.D. Mitchell can do a lot of the same things, not quite as dynamic as a route runner. I think Mitchell was one of the biggest winners from Sunday.
Yeah, he definitely went up my rankings after the combine. He did look impressive. But at the same time, I don't want to overvalue it too much. I watched the Texas Longhorns all year. I was actually shocked after the season ended. I started seeing mock drafts and A.D. Mitchell was going late in the first round. I never for a second was watching him being like, oh, he's going to be an early NFL draft pick. Didn't even cross my mind. He never was like, wow, he's so impressive. He should go early in the
Just so
NFL. So
inconsistent, like game to game.
yeah, I wasn't all that impressed with him all season long, but he does have impressive metrics. He impressed in the 40. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. But I was shocked that he was considered such a high prospect. Now, in our last segment, we're going to talk about the running backs. This isn't the most exciting running back class, especially in terms of like fantasy outlook, but there were a few guys that showed out. They have some good size here. So we're going to hit on those in our final segment to close out the show. This show is sponsored by BetterHelp. What's the first thing you do if you had an extra hour in your day? Read a book, go out to dinner, get a workout in. A lot of us spend our lives wishing we had more time. The best way to squeeze that special thing into your schedule is to know what's important to you and make it a priority. Therapy can help you find what matters to you so you can do more of it. I personally utilize online therapy over the past few years. It has helped me so much with my anxiety, with my irritability. I cannot say enough good things about my experience with online therapy. And I think truly everyone could benefit from going to therapy. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist. And you don't have to stress, because if you want to switch therapists, you can at any time for no additional charge. Learn to make time for what makes you happy with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. So we did have some impressive performances at the combine from these running backs that no one's giving a ton of credit for, but Trey Benson out of Florida State and Jalen Wright out of Tennessee, they run a 4.39 and a 4.38. Who is your number one running back in this class? Because I think it does change from person to person. It seems like everyone has very different rankings. And among these two guys, would they rank inside your top three?
It's going to be the same answer for both. It's Trey Benson for me. I thought the tape this year from Florida State was absolutely unbelievable. At the 33rd team, I compared him to Josh Jacobs. What I didn't anticipate was him running a significantly faster 40-yard dash. And the reason due to that is because when he was at Oregon, I believe it was in 2021, he tore his ACL, MCL, and his meniscus. It took the 2022 season off, came back in 2023, and played really, really well. His combination of size, power, he loves contact, and now you add on top of the athleticism. I'm kind of all in. There's so many running backs in this class that have, a big question mark, whether it's their athleticism or their speed or their vision. I think Trey Benson just checks every single box for me. So as a second round pick in the NFL draft, maybe an early third round pick, I think Benson's going to be the first running back off the board.
So if you think Benson's going to be the first running back off the board, you're giving him second round pick, maybe early third. Do you think maybe only one running back goes over the first two rounds of this draft?
Yeah, I think we get one running back drafted in the side of the top 75-ish picks. It's been a long time since we haven't had a running back selected in the first two rounds. I believe it was back in 1968 is the last time. So it's been a minute. But I do think Benson is going to sneak in there. There's a couple teams late in round two that could use a running back. Dallas, Baltimore. I would look out for those two teams.
So Blake Corum out of Michigan, he runs a 4.53, and he's a bit smaller, under 5'8", 205 pounds. So it's not like a super exciting time. He's had the injury history. Maybe that's, pushing him down a little bit. But do you think this knocks down his draft value? Or, his old coach, Jim Harbaugh, is looking for a new running back. Would you think the Chargers would consider him? I guess the second round would be way too early probably for him, and they have an early pick. I don't even know if they have a third round pick, though.
Yeah, but I think he's going to go somewhere in that third, fourth round range. Okay. Just based off the people I was talking to, 4.53 was a really good time for Blake Corum. They were afraid he was going to run more in the 4.58, 4.59 range. Running in the low 4.5s is excellent. His game is based off vision and contact balance. But to show that he does have a little bit of speed is excellent. And I do think the Chargers are a team mid-rounds that could consider him. I just knowing a couple people in the NFL, they love Blake Corum. They think he can be a kind of a culture changer. I wouldn't be surprised if he's the third or fourth running back off the board.
And any interest for fantasy though, or do you just think he's going to be one of those Potter type guys like
Maybe.
that?
I mean, the landing spot matters so much. Like, could I see Blake Corum being drafted and then just immediately being a team's RB1 because he can literally do it all and coaches love him? Absolutely. So, yeah, just keep an eye on his landing spot. I think that's going to tell us quite a bit about what his immediate fantasy value will be.
Now, Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin and Jonathan Brooks, they didn't run the 40, and Brooks obviously didn't do anything really at this combine because he tore his ACL in the middle of last season at Texas. Now, do you think if Jonathan Brooks didn't tear his ACL, that he would be the top running back off this board?
Yeah, pretty comfortably. And I think you could argue that he would be like a top 40 pick in this draft. He's so well-rounded. His vision is incredible. He reminds me a lot of like prime Aaron Jones, and that would be an awesome player to have in your backfield. Now, the good thing for Jonathan Brooks is the expectation is he's going to be cleared for contact sometime in July. It's likely that he'll be ready for week 1. We've also seen that these running backs that tear their ACL at age 19, 20, 21 can bounce back relatively quickly. Look no further than Breece Hall. So I'm not afraid of drafting Jonathan Brooks in my fantasy leagues and my dynasty leagues. But I think you might be able to get a little bit of a discount because I'm not sure he's going to be the first running back off the board.
Yeah, I think Jonathan Brooks could end up being the best fantasy running back pretty easily. It's just you got to be patient, right?
Yeah,
He's coming off an
absolutely.
ACL tear. And then with Braylon Allen out of Wisconsin, he weighs in at 235 pounds, over 6'1", big boy. Do you have a comp for him? Do you think he goes in the top 3 rounds of this draft?
I do have a comp for him. I think he's the better version of AJ Dillon. Like, remember when AJ Dillon for like that 1 year was a really good player? That's what I think Braylon Allen is going to be. He is just so violent once he gets to the second level, and he's got some home run speed. He's probably the one running back that intrigues me the most because we just don't get running backs that are this big, this physical, and this fast. And he's only 20 years old. Actually, I think he's 19 right now. He'll be 20 on draft day. Um, I don't know where he goes. I don't know how many teams are going to be interested in a 235 plus pound running back, but I could see a situation where he ends up becoming the most valuable in year 1 because he's just going to get all the goal line touches for whatever team drafts him. So could he have 1,000 yards and double-digit touchdowns as a rookie? Absolutely.
So, when AJ Dillon was coming out, he's being compared to Derrick Henry because if you're a big boy and, you're going to be compared to
Sure.
Derrick Henry. Do you think that Braylon Allen is closer to AJ Dillon or Derrick Henry when it comes to his upside?
I mean, that's really hard because Derrick Henry might be like the only Hall of Fame running back that we have in the NFL right now. But I'm going to go closer to Derrick Henry than AJ Dillon. I loved the Wisconsin tape from a year ago. He's just such a unique player. And we saw the linebackers in the safeties in this year's NFL Combine, like 225 pounds is like the average size of a linebacker. I think Braylon Allen might be entering the NFL at the perfect time for him.
So much of these guys at running back just going to come down to landing spot. I do think we're going to find some decent fantasy values in
Yes.
this class at the running back position. It's just figuring out the right one. So once we see the landing spots and get more information about these guys, we will try to figure it all out for you and give you our rankings, and it'll be a great time. That is it for today's show. Thank you so much to Marcus for joining us. Make sure to go listen to him on the Locked On Dynasty podcast. He's the host with my wife, Kate Magdziuk, over there. They do awesome stuff every single day. And then also Locked On Cowboys. If you're a Cowboys fan, or even if not, it's always fun to hear about the Cowboys. If you hate them or love them. I personally, I'm on the fence. It's okay as a Steelers fan. Thank you again to Marcus, and thank you to all for making Locked On Fantasy Football your first listen every day. Every day. I'll be back tomorrow with another awesome guest. Don't miss it. Bye, y'all.